So hello and welcome with Already Booked. We are a student-initiated event, and normally we are inside of the walls of Artez. But today we decided to go outside, and we're at Walter Books. So we wanted to talk about. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous, and that happens sometimes. That's okay. Yeah. So for the past couple of months, we have been making 5 set of books, and these 5 books were made in groups of 3 people. And for all of you who know, the birth of a book is a very intense project. And weeks before at Artez, you see people running around, screaming obscenities at the printer, or just pushing each other away from the line. But eventually we made it, and that's why we decided to do this live stream. And yeah, but before we start with the 1 hour program about the 5 books that we made and the individual projections, we are together here with Krista from Walter Books.
Hello.
So hi Krista, thank you for letting us in your space.
You're very welcome.
That's good to hear. Yeah, we were curious. We also had a couple of questions for you actually, because you have a gorgeous bookstore. And
Thank you.
and yeah, you have a gorgeous bookstore and you have very particular books. But my question for you was, if you would have more space at Walters, what would you do with the space?
Like literal space.
Literal space.
I always wanted something like a swing, or like huge mattresses, or like a net hanging up where you could read and then other people could walk under you.
Okay.
Make it a bit more embodied, like more embodied experience of reading instead of like chairs or couch.
Yeah.
Experiment, I think, with how you read.
So that when you're reading, it might be that somebody's clothing just is falling off from upstairs.
Exactly, exactly. You
From the
can
net.
see someone kind of peeking through a net. Yeah, I think this would like some acrobatics. That's what's missing in a lot of bookshops.
Yeah, that's true.
It's all very stiff, straightforward. You walk a circle around
Yeah,
a
that's
table, mix it up a bit.
That
Yeah.
sounds nice. I would definitely be hanging in a mat and reading a book.
You're right.
And what is the biggest surprise actually about running a bookstore?
Well, obviously, I don't have time to read.
No.
I thought that would be the case. It's not. The biggest surprise, maybe particularly this bookshop. I don't know, like this is the first bookshop I own and don't have any experience as a bookseller. Okay, I have to move closer to the mic. I'm literally eating it. But what I find surprising of this bookshop in particular is that there are so many people walking right past the books and to the kitchen table.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, okay, I put so much effort into making this selection. Could you please take one little look at them? But no, I also, of course, appreciate that people come by for a chat. And actually, the conversations that we then have are reflected what is also in the books as well. So it's many different ways of learning and being together in a space.
Yeah, I guess you're making it then a more intimate space also, if it's just
Yeah.
walk in, buy a book, go away.
Yeah, I guess like intimate and at the same time shared, because I do find that the process of reading is quite intimate and individual. So yeah, it's the books, as I always kind of explain, but no one likes this metaphor as much as I do. But I always see the selection of books as the bat signal in the sky. You know, like in the Batman movies, you have. Whenever the guy, whatever needs Batman, he puts the bat signal in the sky, and then Batman comes, and that's how they communicate. And I feel like the books are also kind of a calling out, and it calls out to some people, certain people. They come in, and then different things can happen.
Yeah,
possibly on a swing.
Possibly with us coming in here and
yes.
being like, hey, can we use also the space?
Also, yes, definitely.
Well, we have a little bit of a tight schedule because we have 5 books coming up and individual projections of the books. So we'll be switching over to the first book. And then we'll see you. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. See you later. So welcome back. We're now sitting together with Femke. She is a designer of the first book that we want to do an interview about. And the book is The Sympathizer, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's right.
So hi Femke.
Hi, Kimia.
Yeah, I was wondering if you can just give me a short summary of the book.
Yeah, so the book is called The Sympathizer, she just said, and it's written by Vietnam Nguyen, and it talks about how he fled from Vietnam as a refugee to America and how he experienced it.
Okay, sorry. And can you explain to me, like, when you first opened the book, when you started reading it, what were you experiencing about the writing style?
Yeah, so what I experienced while reading the book was that it was really described in detail, and
a lot of information.
yeah. So and then while reading it, I also noticed that it felt like he had sort of different personalities. So I was reading a book from different people, and yeah, that's why we also made some choices with that in the design.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because how did you translate what you were reading inside of the book into a physical design? Like, what are the key aspects of translating?
So one of the key aspects is those different personalities being translated, and how we did that was by using different kinds of papers, different weights, different colors, but all still the color white with different shades of white.
Yeah.
And we chose to use the scrap paper actually from the cutting machine at our school. So they always have cutting slab from bigger pieces of paper, and they vary from like a few centimeters to the maximum of width of an A4.
Okay.
And yeah, that's why we chose to make 4 different kinds of paper, or 4 different sizes, and we made that into a book.
Okay. Okay, that sounds technical actually. I mean,
yeah, it was a bit practical and technical. Yeah.
Yeah, like, okay, how does the technical process go? Because you have all of these sizes, and then you have to make one coherent book of it.
Yeah, because are you then going to use all those different sizes and show that in the book, or do you decide on a few different sizes to use into the book? So we actually looked at the content of the book, and we noticed that it kind of felt like the book had 4 different parts. Okay. So it's the first part where he is in Vietnam still, and then he travels to America, or he fled to America. And then he goes on a mission, that's a different part, and he has a confession in the end. Okay. So that's how we divided it. The middle parts are pretty big, and then the first and last part are smaller. And that's how you see that in the, if you look at the book, you see those 4 different steps.
Okay, that's interesting. That's nice, because then I'm also wondering, of course, when we usually read a book, it has a very neutral layout.
Yeah.
I'm guessing also, so as a reader, you can use your own imagination, but in your design, you took a very specific, it has a very specific design. Does it influence also like the way the reader is supposed to go through the book?
Yeah, so we wanted to make the book a little bit less heavy than the content might be. So that's why we chose for those 4 different parts, and then in between those 4 different parts you see the maps. And those maps are actually folded, so they can be used as inserts. So also we thought about this concept of he is moving around, and when you're moving around you're gathering certain things. So maybe while you're reading a book, you might also gather things while reading it.
Okay, so
and you could insert those into the book.
Okay, so you're actually then giving your reader not just a reading experience, but also you're making them enact something.
Yeah, and it also makes it their personal sort of object.
Okay, that's nice. I can't wait to read it. But for the viewers that are actually listening in, I'm seeing all the books here. So, but I'm guessing that you are also online seeing a part of the book. Can I actually hold the book in my hand?
Yeah, sure.
Because then for you, the viewers, I can then touch the book.
You want to get it? Yeah.
So this is it. And then you spoke to me about how every chapter is then a part of his story.
No, the book has 23 chapters in total, but then there's 4 different parts are divided between them. Okay. So as you can see, the first part is pretty small because that's only the first and the second chapter.
Okay, and how then do you, so you have I see now from the top that there's the different kind of papers.
Yeah.
And then how does that process go? The designing of collecting all the papers, cutting them all in pieces, and then gluing it up. Can you tell me something about the design of this part? So you collected all of the papers.
Yeah.
And then you cut them, and then it's a glue back, if I'm right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was a little bit tricky with the paper because normally when using paper, you have to, on a printer actually yourself, you have to put in the weight of the paper. But now I had this stack where there was heavy paper, thinner paper, heavy paper, and I just wanted to make the print in one because it's like 280 pages.
Yeah.
So I decided to try that out, and eventually it worked. I don't know if the computer room people were happy about it, but it worked, and
it's a good. I like the design. If I'm now skipping through it, I feel the change in paper.
Yeah. So normally when you flip through a book, it goes really smooth, but this book, because of the different weights, you can't really flip through it like through the.
No, but I'm guessing also somebody's story along the line gets heavier and heavier.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that's up. I think the sympathizer is up, and then we are going. So thanks, Femke, for talking about the sympathizer, talking about your design. And then we will be going to the next book. So the next book that we'll be going through is Chasm by Dorothea Tenning. So welcome to Chasm. Then, abruptly, the house is there, as shocking as a fallen meteor, ponderous, tall, defiant, and truly alien. It nicks the desert like a weapon. This uneasy amalgamation of architectural whims, its lines shimmer uncertainly in the waning daylight of a Friday afternoon. I wonder if you're wondering, dear, about me. I wonder, is it any wonder that I wonder? For a moment, disturbing the elan of his pose, detached, sultanic, undeniably effective, that is, if one were to judge by some of his guests. He had dealt with incongruities before, but as someone, an annoyance pesky buzzing at the bottom of his wineglass, subject of the nasty clause in those papers, was also there. In view of his history and his skewed sexuality, there seemed no reason for such a capitulation before mere feminine beauty. Deft, slashing, it had separated her from the world of ordinary mortals and thrust her into a freakish position of anomaly. Here, in the center of filmmaking, with its intensities, its ambitions, its mystique. Nadine did not act. It had, of course, been offered. Albert's family, which she abhorred, was an extended one by the name of Exodus. Exodus uncles, Exodus aunts, and Exodus cousins abounded. His excesses, his scrapes, his galling rebellion. His stories were fragmented and sometimes lurid, a mixture of lore and hearsay, but he knew the neighboring canyons, its spirits and its contours by heart. An annoyance, or even a relief, a numbing disbelief invaded him as he observed himself moving through these rooms, a disbelief shaping itself into an abiding question. What am I doing here? He played at being the catalyst. He was intoxicated with the odors of turpentine, varnishes, oils, secatives, alcohols. The corridor was dark as a cave. Under a door gleamed a yellow silver of light. He knocked. From at least a dozen wall sconces, beside numerous lamps and a crystal-laden chandelier, the light streamed, scalded the room as if to purify the outlandish furniture and bric-a-brac that exploded into every corner. It was nearly overpowered by the mantelpiece that rose like some separate architectural folly to the domed ceiling. Without a single straight line, spurning any hint of symmetry, it occupied the wall with much the same sort of random form as a twist of smoke. In its design, there was no reference to nature, no leaves, fruits, flowers, animals, birds, no volutes or familiar arabesque in its carving. Just an unsettling hint of another world, where birds and flowers, if not unknown, were surely unloved. But the little girl is having her dinner, and she doesn't like music while she eats. I like your beard, she said. It's distinguished. Dry and suffocating as it was, her lymphatic approach did not deter him. Straining for nonchalance, he brought himself to smile. He even put out a hand to grasp hers. In the doorway at the far end of the room stood a white figure, the little girl, sharply focused in the bright light. Her pretty head was lifted, her pose imperious. She held a fork in her right hand. But, my dear child, he pronounced his words slowly, I'm not going to eat your dinner. Oh well, he threw this out like a philosophical bouquet. I guess these things happen to everyone, the power of suggestion, the runaway mind. She turned to Meridian. Did you know that? There are lions in this desert. She has seen them. You can smile. Go on, smile. But men forget the names in the crevices. There was nothing left to tell. welcome back at Walters. I hope you enjoyed the individual projects that were shown. And we are back now for another interview, this time with the Over Story, and we have one of the designers with us. Hi, Anna.
Hello. Hello, thank you for having me.
Yes, I love you for having us, if that's a good sentence. So you have designed the Overstory, but the Overstory is something else. The design is very intricate, is very complicated, so I'm also going to ask you to bring me along with the design.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the viewers will see an image of the book. So let's start at the beginning.
Yes.
So how did it start? You were reading with the group, and
To understand the book, we had to read it. We have, I would say, an intricate way of understanding the design. You understand it by reading. So that's why the first 8 chapters are really important because they're the individual stories of the characters that you know nothing about. They don't connect. And you're reading and you realize what, like, you don't realize. You're just like thinking, what will happen?
okay, so when you were reading the book, the first thing you were thinking was, what is this confusion?
It's confusion, yes.
Okay, that's good. That's nice to know. And then you go along with reading the book.
Yeah, we needed to find like the click. We needed to click with the text because that's how you design, right? That was our process.
Yeah.
We had to understand what we're reading and then figuring it out.
Yes.
And after we got to the part where these stories came together, it was clear that we can make the separation in the design to have the majority of text plus these individual chapters in the beginning that are so confusing that they can actually be taken away apart from the book.
Okay, so you have a bit of a dynamic book.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you have, like, if I'm right, you have a main text,
Yes.
and there's all of these smaller booklets that attach to the main story.
We call them roots, and the main book is the trunk. That's how we call them. It's inspired by Richard Powers, who of course wrote the book. But to us, roots are these individual chapters that are like the beginning of the text, and then they all come in the trunk. And that's what also you see with the pictures, how the book was organized.
Yeah, because what are these pictures exactly?
The pictures in the roots, we don't have pictures in the trunk. In the roots, you have each chapter that represents one character that actually is surrounded by a specific tree.
Yeah.
So the pictures are above the tree.
Yes.
That actually represent that one character. For example, chestnut, mulberry,
And these
redwood
all
tree,
represent a certain character.
a specific character.
A specific character.
Yes, it's a lot
Okay.
of characters. So many fun moments of like, did you design Patricia? No, I designed Douglas. Like, we just had like little ways of talking about these chapters because they had human names. Yeah.
Okay. Then I have another question, because if you're reading the book and the book is apparently confusing, and you've decided in your design to make it understandable,
Mm-hmm.
into what point are you actually changing then the narrative of the book by making it understandable?
Well, to us, the book is understandable if you take the time to read it fully. Because after those 8 chapters, you understand that they come together, and you understand that all these people came together because they loved trees and because they wanted to save them and because nature actually needs humanity's help. That's their main, I would say, ground. That's how all of these characters come together. So we didn't take that much liberty besides separating it physically. That's all.
Okay, that's sounds interesting. I would love to read the book and maybe be less confused if I would read it.
Take the time.
And because it's a very intricate book. It took me some time to understand your design. How did the collaboration go between you? Did you all have set tasks, or?
Yeah, very straightforward. We just had different tasks for each other and we kept to it. We were very good in communicating and meeting every Thursday. To us, that was the solution.
Okay, that's nice. It's inspiring to hear. I see 2 minutes.
I can talk more about it. Then
No, but of course, this is a bit of an, you know how busy, like you are busy with the Overstory and there's all these books, and we are of course busy with making this radio show or this streaming show, so it's of course baby steps, but I love to talk 2 minutes about your book, like I really don't care, to talk 2 minutes about your book because I did have another question. Because you talked about you have a root, you have a trunk,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a crown.
Mm-hmm.
What of these elements are also in the writer's book?
All three.
All three of
All
them.
three. The crown we
Okay.
didn't physically separate because the crown is part of the trunk for us.
Yeah.
Physically, we have two things that come together. The big book, which we call the trunk, and the root of these individual stories that you read, you can multiply, you can distribute, you can give to one person or the other, but they all come together by reading this, understanding who the characters are, and then you read the part where they all come together, which is called the trunk. I know it's complicated, and we have so many months in which these words meant something to us, but maybe for the viewers and for you, it's complicated.
No, I'm trying. That's why I'm asking
Yeah.
repeating the question so we all get to understand it. Because yeah, but isn't that in a way also more confusing to us? Because if I just get like one separate book which is about this character, and I get another edition which is about that character, isn't that confusing or
And that's
fragmenting?
how you feel what we felt when we started.
Oh, the Lord.
So we
okay.
kind of kept that personality of the book is confusing,
Yeah.
but also the assignment and way we wanted to produce it was to multiply it, and that was our solution.
That's a good solution then. I am curious to read the book though now.
Thank you. Yeah.
And our time is also up. We have to go to the individuals, and then we have another reading session also coming up. 2 reading sessions coming up. And we'll be seeing you. Just sit back, relax again, grab a watermelon, drink some water. See you later. welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the individual projects that you saw and the other group project. We're here with Autumn, and she's part of the design group who designed the bell. And she's going to give us a reading session. So enjoy, sit back and relax. Again, I would say.
Yeah. On the day after his first conversation with Dora about the bell, he had gone for another solitary swim. He had dived a large number of times investigating the shape or position of the object in detail. He had now no doubts, by Dora's certainty and confirmed by his own findings, that this was indeed the bell. Two colossal problems now faced him. The first, how to get the bell out of the water, and the second was how to effect the substitution of the old bell for the new, which was to constitute Dora's miracle. Both these tasks to be performed undiscovered and with no helper but Dora. It was a tall order. Dora, who had clearly got no conception of how large and how heavy the bell was, seemed to think it all perfectly possible, and replied upon Toby's skill with an enthusiasm which both exasperated and melted him. Even though he knew it to be based on ignorance, her confidence infected him. He was infected by her curious vision, her grotesque imagination of the return to life of the medieval bell. It was as if for her this was to be a magical act of shattering significance, a sort of rite of power and liberation. And although it was not an act which Toby could understand, or which in any other circumstance he would have had any taste for, he was prepared to catch her enthusiasm and to be, for this occasion, the sorcerer apprentice. It was the apprentice, however, who had to contrive the details of the sorcery. He had discussed various plans with Dora, whose ignorance of dynamic turned out to be staggering. The fact was, after some suggestion involving cathodes had been set aside, that the only motive power available to them, which could have even a chance of doing the job, was the tractor. Even then, as Toby tried to impress upon Dora, it was possible that they would be simply unable to shift the bell. The amount of moody ooze inside it alone would double its weight, and the lower part amount of moody ooze part of it might turn out to be thoroughly jammed in the thicker mold of floor of the lake. Toby had attempted to dig the ooze away from it on his last diving expedition, but with only partial success. It was a bore that Dora could neither swim nor drive tractor, since this meant that the bell could not be given an extra helping hand from below while it was being pulled from above. "I'm afraid I'm perfectly useless," said Dora, her hands about her knees, her large eyes glowing at him with submissive admiration as they sat in the wood having their final conference. Toby found her perfectly captivating.
No, that was beautifully read. That was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have another person in that group that's going to give us a second part. So we are going to experience Bell, I think, in a fragmented way. That was the idea. So thank you, Autumn, for reading for us.
Thank you for having me.
And then our next reader for the Bell, the same book, is... Let's put it. Thank you. Keep in mind that we have not always the best equipment, so really talk in the microphone so we can really listen to your voice and really listen to you reading from the bell. So, and close to the mic, my friend.
Close to the mic.
Close to the mic.
Dora got into the train. It was now very full indeed, and people were sitting four aside. Before she sat down, she inspected herself quickly in the mirror. In spite of all her awful experiences, she looked good. She had a round, well-formed face and a large mouth that liked to smile. Her eyes were a dark, salty blue and rather long and large. art had darkened but not thinned her vigorous triangular eyebrows. Her hair was golden brown and grew in long, flat strips down the side of her face, like femmes growing on a rock. This was attractive. Her figure was by no means what it had been. She turned towards her seat. A large elderly lady shifted a little to make room. Feeling fat and hot in the smart featureless coat and skirt, which she had not worn since spring, Dora squeezed herself in. She hated the sensation of another human being wedged against her side. Her skirt was very tight. Her high-heeled shoes were too. She could feel her own perspiration and was beginning to smell that of others. It was a devilish hot day. She reflected all the same that she was lucky to have a seat, and with a certain satisfaction watched the corridor fill up with people who had no seats. Another elderly lady, struggling through the crush, reached the door of Dora's carriage and addressed her neighbor. "Ah, there you are, dear. I thought you were nearer the front." They looked at each other rather gloomily, the standing lady leaning at an angle through the doorway, her feet trapped in a heap of luggage. They began a conversation about how they had never seen the train so full. Dora stopped listening because a dreadful thought had struck her. She ought to give up her seat. She rejected the thought, but it came back. There was no doubt about it. The elderly lady who was standing looked very frail indeed, and it was not only proper that Dora, who was young and healthy, should give her seat to the lady who could then sit next to her friend. Dora felt the blood rushing to her face. She sat still and considered the matter. There was no point in being hasty. It was possible, of course, that while clearly admitting that she ought to give up her seat, she might nevertheless simply not do so out of pure selfishness. This would in some way be a better situation than what would have been the case if it had simply not occurred to her at all, that she ought to give up her seat. On the other side of the seated lady, a man was sitting. He was reading his newspaper and did not seem to be thinking about his duty. Perhaps if Dora waited, it would occur to the man to give his seat to the other lady. Unlikely. Dora examined the other inhabitants of the carriage. None of them looked in the least uneasy. Their faces, if not already buried in books, reflected the selfish glee which had probably been on her own a moment since as she watched the crowd in the corridor. There was another aspect to the matter. She had taken the trouble to arrive early, and surely ought to be rewarded for this, though perhaps the two ladies had arrived as early as they could. There was no knowing, but in any case there was an elementary justice in the first comers having the seats. The old lady would be perfectly all right in the corridor. The corridor was full of ladies anyway, and no one else seemed to be bothered by this, least of all the old ladies themselves. Dora hated pointless sacrifices. She was tired after her recent emotion and deserved a rest. Besides, it would never do to arrive at her destination exhausted. She regarded her state of distress as completely neurotic. She decided not to give up her seat. She got up and said to the standing lady, "Do sit down here, please. I'm not going very far, and I'd much rather stand anyway." "How very kind of you," said the standing lady. "Now I can sit next to my friend. I have a seat of my own further down, you know. Perhaps we can just exchange seats? Do let me help you move your luggage." Dora glowed with delight. What is sweeter than the unhoped-for reward for the virtuous act? She began to struggle along the corridor with the big suitcase, while the elderly lady followed with a canvas bag and Paul's hat. It was difficult to get along, and Paul's hat didn't seem to be doing too well. The train began to move. When they reached the other carriage, it turned out that the lady had a comer seat by the window. Dora's cup was running over. The lady, who had very little luggage, departed, and Dora was able to install herself at once. "Let me help you," said a tall, sunburned man who was sitting opposite. He hoisted the big case easily onto the rack, and Dora threw Paul's hat up after it. The man smiled in a friendly way. They sat down. Everyone in this carriage was thinner. Dora closed her eyes and remembered her fear. She was returning. and deliberately.
Thank you, Britt. That was really nice. Thank you for reading from the bell. Thank you for introducing us to Dora, the protagonist. And it's funny, if we still have a bit of time, I also wonder. Because in the design of the book, you used all of these different papers. And now through the reading sessions that Aurum is reading, you're reading, and actually Chewon will be reading also soon from the bell, it feels like I'm getting to know Dora in different perspectives. So thank you for the reading session. Then we have the third member of the designers group of the bell.
Hi.
Hi. And you're also going to read for us. And you actually have the physical design also with you, so that's really nice, so we can see it. And take us along through a journey of Dora.
Yes. Michael had taught her how to use the single oar. Then a new idea occurred to her. A second oar was always kept for emergencies upon the landing stage. Dora picked it up. She fitted the two oars into the row locks and then undid the painter that joined the boat to the two sides of the ferry. No one would be coming across that way now. She got in and sat down, trying the oars gingerly. She used to know how to row. After a certain amount of splashing, she found that she still knew. The oars dipped and the boat moved away slowly over the surface of the water. Delighted, Dora released her breath and sat enjoying the gliding motion and the silence of the misty lake, broken only by the dripping of water from the blade. The mist was becoming golden. Now it began to clear away, and she saw the court and the high walls of the abbey toward which she was drifting. Behind the court, the clouds were in perpetual motion, but the sky was clear at the zenith, and the sunshine began to warm her. She kicked off her sandals and trailed one foot in the water over the edge of the boat. The depths below frightened her no longer. She looked at the court. She could not help being glad that Michael and Catherine would not live there, and their children and their children's children. Soon all this would be inside the enclosure, and no one would see it anymore. This green reed, this glassy water, these quiet reflections of pillar and dome would be gone forever. It was indeed as if, and there was comfort in the thought, when she herself left it, Imber would cease to be. But in this moment, and it was its last moment, it belonged to her. She had survived. She drew in her foot and began to row slowly along the lake. From the tower above her, the bell began to ring for nuns. She scarcely heard it. Already for her it rang from another world. Tonight she would be telling the whole story to Sally.
Yay! Thank you also for reading. It's the best reading session ever to get on a Friday night after a very busy week, so thank you. And yeah, I think we are moving. I need to wake up because I was so listening. I think we need to move on to, there's a couple of individual projects left, and then we will move on to the last reading session, performance, and we'll see you later. we're back. I hope you enjoyed the individual project that you saw earlier. And we're back now with Frankenstein and with one of the designers, Meerte.
Yes.
Hey, Meerte.
Hey.
I have to say I really like this book, actually. I like what you did. And I want to speak about like what you did exactly in the book, because what I'm seeing now in the book is edits.
Yes, exactly.
Can you explain to me what these edits are?
So the original story of Mary Shelley was edited by her husband. So the text that is published and now worldwide known are the edits of her husband. So we thought it would be fair to her and her storytelling to reverse the editorial process and stripe out his edits and put in her own words back into the story.
Okay.
So the books we have in our hands right now are her words.
Okay, so you actually reversed the process of mansplaining.
Yeah, exactly. We
Okay,
did.
I love that.
Yeah, we did.
And we were thinking of doing a performance together to show the words of the original version of Mary Shelley
Yes.
versus the edits of Percy Shelley.
Yes, exactly.
So I will be reading along with you, Meerte.
Yeah.
And who am I? Am I Percy or am I Shelley?
You're
Mary.
well, that's a good question. Of course, she wrote like most of it, but then he also got intertwined. So
Okay.
the words that I will be saying on top of hers are Mary's words.
Okay.
That's for sure.
So, but is that then true that the most known version of Frankenstein, that's really Percy's edits?
Yeah, it's Percy's edits.
Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's all go back to the original of Mary, maybe. That's also nice.
Yes.
And we are starting in chapter 9, page 130. And here I go. You will be doing the edits.
Yes.
The next day, contrary to the procrastinations of our guides, was fine, although clouded. We visited the source of the Aveyron and rode about the valley
The
until
whole day.
evening. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized in some degree. Also, they diverted my mind from the thoughts over which it had brooded for the last month. I returned in the evening. I was fatigued, but less unhappy, and conversed with my family with more cheerfulness than had been my custom for some time. My father was pleased, and Elizabeth overjoyed. "My dear cousin," said she, "you see what happiness you diffuse when you are happy.
Cheerful.
Do not relapse again." The following morning the rain poured down in torrents, and thick mists hid the summits of the mountains. I rose early, but felt unusually melancholy. The rain depressed me. My old feelings recurred, and I was miserable. I knew how disappointed my father would be at this sudden change, and I wished to avoid him until I had recovered myself so far as to be enabled to conceal those feelings that overpowered me. I knew that they would remain that day at the inn, and as I had ever inured myself to rain, moisture, and cold, I resolved to go alone to the summit of Montaver. I remembered the effects that the view of the tremendous and ever-moving glacier had produced upon my mind when I first saw it. It had filled me with a sublime ecstasy that gave wings to the soul and allowed it to soar from the obscure
Lower.
world to light and joy. The sight of the awful and majestic in nature had indeed always the effect of solemnizing my mind and causing me to forget the passing cares of life. I determined to go alone, for I was well acquainted with the path, and the presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. The ascent is precipitous, but the path is cut into continual and short windings, which enable you to surmount the perpendicularity of the mountain. It is a scene terrifically desolate. Thank you, Percy, for editing me. In 1,000 posts, in the trace of the winter avalanche may be perceived, where trees lie broken and strewed on the ground, some entirely destroyed, others bent, leaning upon the jutting rocks of the
Corners.
mountain, or transversely upon other trees. The path, as you ascend higher, is intersected
Burst.
by ravines of snow, which stones continually roll from above. One of them is particularly dangerous, as the slightest sound, such as even speaking in a loud voice, produces a concussion of air sufficient to draw destruction upon the head of the speaker. The pines are not tall or luxuriant, but they are somber, and add an air of severity to the scene. I looked on a valley beneath. Vast mists were rising from the rivers which ran through it, and curling in thick wreaths around the opposite mountains, whose summits were hidden in the uniform clouds, while rain poured upon from the dark sky, and added to the melancholy impression I received from the objects around me. Alas, why does man boast of sensibilities superior to those apparent in the brute? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free. But now we are moved by every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that word may convey to us. I think I'm gonna stop it now,
that's okay.
because it's a lot of reading.
Should
we
I
have to
also
go
note
through.
something about it?
Please note something about it.
I've really noticed in the editorial process that Mary Shelley's words and her way of language is really modern and very easy to read for nowadays readers. And I think that Percy really complicated a lot of the words or sentences she wrote. And I think that's very noticeable to state because the book is also still such a classical. And I think that if it were her,
Yeah.
it's so in front of her time. It was really noticeable in the editing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing here also a lot of edits. From inestimable to indispensable, from men to philosophers, from going to journeying. And I'm guessing, yeah, the edits that you put above it are Mary Shelley's edits,
Mm-hmm.
the original version.
Yeah.
And it's interesting then that I see that he changed philosophers into men in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea actually to go back to the original. Oh, I have to be closer to the mic. Yeah, yeah. I really because I saw your process during the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and I do think it's important to go back to the source material of a book like this.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very important. and
Yeah.
Also interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's it. We went through all of the readings, the interviews, the performances, and the individual projects. But there's one more reflection that's coming, and we will see you after that. And also, because we're reaching the end, we do love it for there to be questions and answers. So if you have a Q&A, I think there's a chat open.
There will be there will be a small bit with the individual projects for Frankenstein, which Pascal and Cheyenne worked on. So we will showcase that in a minute.
Yes, we will show that in a minute. And if you have questions, leave it in the question,
Yes.
the Q&A.
Leave them.
I see Femke and Isa ready to hear the questions, and we'll see you after that.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Welcome back again.
Okay, welcome back. Yeah, so we reached the end of the whole stream, but we have some Q&A we saw in the chat, so we want to answer that, and you're probably also seeing our gorgeous glitching cam. So we're showing you a little bit of backstage of planning everything perfectly until like last minute the cam just starts glitching.
Yeah, well,
Shit happens.
graphic design, you know?
We're not interaction design. Just give us paper and books. So yeah, questions, please. Isa is behind. Isa Tamruti is behind, and Femke is behind. The
Did you-
laptop. Shoot us.
Shoot us with questions.
Not physically.
The author, as in...
Did the author have any opinions on Percy's edits? Did she know? Did Mary Shelley
Mary
know?
Shelley? Yeah, of course she knew. But I think the book was published in 18 or 19? 1811?
Yeah.
So 11. So in those times, women's rights were not really a thing yet. So it was already such a big thing that this woman was publishing, under the name of a woman, was being published to the public. So I think in those times, it was already good for her that she was able to even put her stuff out there.
Yeah. Because did she use her own name, or did she use in her
yes,
beginning book also another name?
I think that she used her own name. Yeah,
because
they
that is
used
a
her name.
thing.
Yeah, they did use her name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's true what you're saying, I guess. I mean, it's very much normalized that women have a certain role within the society. So being a writer, let alone a horror science fiction writer, which Mary Shelley is a bit of not done.
Yeah, I think it was very weird in those times.
So
But
she was one of the first Western badass bitches we had.
yeah,
in-
basically.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, true.
Okay, do we have another question? Hit us. Not too hard. Of course, my own. No.
Personally, I really like Aram's book of the Bell. Should we show it?
Yeah, that we have to show because Arum does have a gorgeous book design. Actually, we need a minute to show that. Can I have one because I'm showing it? Okay. Yeah. So let's repeat the question. Our question was, which individual project did you like the most? And our immediate, or Meert's immediate reaction was the work of Arum, and she has actually a very intricate book design again.
Yeah, so this one is from the Bell. I will show briefly what it looks like. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Or should I, or are you coming closer?
Come with us. We are throwing down the formalities. It's gonna be. We forgot that Arum is also here while Meert is presenting her individual project, so we had a little bit of a funny moment. And there is no sound? Oh.
We are super sorry.
how should we do this? Should we invite Aram here
Aram.
to present her own book? I think that's possible, right?
Yeah. And then I also have a favorite individual project. Okay, so Aram is showing Meerte's favorite book, which is Aram's book.
Yeah, this is my book.
But you need to be closer to the mic.
Oh, I'm wearing mask. Yeah,
Oh,
of
look
course.
how responsible we are.
Yeah.
We're educated nicely by our teachers.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and yeah, I redesigned the bell by my interpretation, and then I found some miracles in the body text. For example, yeah, for the first chapter, the Dora, Dora, the main character, was keeps saying like, I'm useless, I'm not really perfect, and I'm really clumsy. I feel like these sentences are from his her husband, who is Paul, and then of course he's a bit older than her, and then also he's quite strict and a really rich man. And I found maybe it was manipulated by her husband. And then I tried to find these are research about moral code. I found on.
So this one talks about groupism. I saw one about gaslighting.
First chapter is the gaslighting, and then chapter by chapter I found moral code, and then the third you mentioned is groupism, and then all research organized
so we
by
should
the.
have actually given this maybe to Percy.
Yeah.
Before he was re-editing a whole book. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, I just highlighted the research because you can read whole the text, and then you can find also you can judge the moral code, and then you will unfold and then find the research and then the information about that moral code.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah, it's gorgeous. And I can understand why Meerte.
Also, it's the other side. Yes.
So if I do this,
Yeah.
you do it because it's such a delicate book. Oh yeah, let's go to the next question. Oh yeah. Okay, thank you, Autumn.
Yeah,
Yay.
thank you.
And we have a next Q&A. And did you guys choose the books yourself? No, actually we did not. we had Joris Malta, who is our typography teacher, and he read these books prior and then decided to give them to us to actually read, and he's here, our dearest teacher. Teacher, please sit down.
And talk into the microphone, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah,
You have a very sensitive mic, so be gentle to it.
I will. I try to.
So you chose us. You chose us the books, right?
Yeah. It's well, I love to read fiction. I do it. I do it all the time. There's always a book that I'm reading, and I wanted to introduce the idea of fiction also in the design class, in the typography class.
Yeah.
And a way that I wanted to do that was that we would basically set up a sort of a reading club together. So we would read these different titles.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the question came up, what titles are we going to read? And I didn't want to be too specific about any theme or topic or anything. And in the end, basically, I made a very, very practical choice. And these were the 5 books that I read myself most recently.
Yeah.
So that I could actually talk to you guys about, what is in these books, what are your experiences with it,
Yeah.
And that I would actually know something about the book myself.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
then you can help us designing the book, of course, if you already have the information.
Exactly. Yeah. Because one of the ideas behind the class was also to take the time and the opportunity to really read a text and discuss it before you start designing it, or design it during reading.
And during a very busy curriculum.
Of course, yes. But in my opinion, there should always be time to read a good book.
Yeah, we enjoyed. I think everybody enjoyed reading their books. But then a question for you, because we asked it, of course, to all of the students. And okay, so there is a certain authorship that the author has in designing the book, and you're asking us to completely redesign a whole book. How does it change the content, the narrative of the book by letting us decide how the reader should hold it and should read it? Like
Yeah, well, I think that any book design, even if it were designed in, let's say, a normal way, already directs the viewer into a certain direction. You know, a book is not a pile of pages that holds a text.
No.
It's also an object that manifests itself in the world, and the entire thing communicates. So the entire design is giving you cues about what this book actually is. And of course, the designs that you've been working on have been more experimental than what would be a normal book, I guess, that would be normally published. But I think that it's exactly these kind of questions that you're posing right now.
Yeah.
Like, what is your influence as a designer, but also what is your responsibility as a designer, are super important to talk about. Sometimes you do change the content of the book,
Yeah.
and sometimes you confuse it more, and it becomes less readable in a way. And in other times, all of a sudden you uncover a layer that would be impossible to find if you would buy the normal book, like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, for instance.
That's true.
That kind of edits, I think, are very interesting.
Yeah, there are very interesting edits. Thank you. And I'm not going to ask you what's your favorite book, because we don't talk about favoritism. Or do we? I mean,
No, let's not do that.
No. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for organizing this. I would like to thank you all. Now that I'm sitting here anyway, I would really like to thank everybody basically in the class who've been working on these projects. I think it's been a really nice semester. I really enjoyed seeing the development of all the design projects, and I'm also incredibly grateful for you for organizing this live stream. It's I think it's very special that we were able, with your organization skills, to get out of this school also, and to sort of venture into the world and see how we can reach a wider audience.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot for that.
Yeah, and we have to thank Femke Kersten, because she's
Absolutely.
also the mother of organizing. We have Chewan and Meerte, who did the visual identity. We have Isa Tamruti, who is like the technical digibate, whatever. And then, I'm just sitting here being pretty. But yeah, it was nice doing this outside of school, actually.
I think so.
Yes.
Let's
We
do
have-
it again.
Oh my God, we have 2 more
Can I go?
questions. Yes, please go. Meerte, please come back. Come back.
Otherwise, she's lonely.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. Tell me, does somebody want my phone number? What was the fun part
Most
about this
fun.
process? What is the most fun part of this process? Meerte, take it away.
I didn't do an individual project, but the team project was a lot of work, because you're working with a fiction book that's really long. So you have to really typeset. The typeset is it seems like such a small detail, but it actually takes a long time to edit through the book.
How long?
Long nights,
Oh shit. Yeah.
late nights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recognize that. I think that's the thing with the whole books. You know, it looks like clear-cut products. It looks like an object, but like the amount of detail that goes into, like putting it on the nice margins, So yeah, it's crazy the amount of detail goes into it. So I'm guessing for you it was also crazy.
Yeah, and
Is
for
that
you
the
as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But it's a nice process. I personally really like book design, so for me it's a lot of work, but I like putting in that work. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the most fun part for me was actually reading the book, because we had Chasm, or Chasm, or Chasm. We still don't know how to pronounce it. And then you're reading, and then you're actually coming together and then talking about the part that you read, and then you see like, oh, wait a second, somebody is picking up on this perspective, and I'm like seeing this. So I think I love reading and then talking about what you read. But the designing thing, that's not my, that's, I like it, but it's a lot of focus. Okay, so next question, please. Which typeface is mainly used? We do, because the poster is not with type designs. It was the rolling thing that was.
Yeah. So
Maybe it's nice to show.
for the identity, can we show? No, I think we don't have sound with it, with the transitions.
Okay. Yeah, so
With
we
the
have
looping.
we have this transition where
I
we
don't
put
think-
all
I
of the
don't think-
fonts.
You've been seeing it throughout the whole live stream.
Yeah. So because I think everybody used a different font. There wasn't.
It
one
was
that
super
was-
different.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we used the 5 different fonts that were used for the books, so for titles and for
Do you know which font you used?
we used Avara,
Avara.
and it's only in bold italic. That's actually the edit part. The
Yeah.
other one is called
Blackout.
Blackout.
Shit.
um,
We also had 2 fonts. We had Swiss.
all
and
the
then
others I know.
We had Swiss italic.
Swiss works.
Yeah, we had Swiss works because in Chasm, you don't see the inside of our book during this show. We did the dialogue only in italics, so that you're actually talking in your brain when you're reading. So yeah, we chose Swiss.
Yeah. Other fonts that were used were Pete Serif Book. So very neat type. And then I think
Which one did the bell use? I'm look.
Charter.
Charter.
Chartier.
I've heard.
Charter, right?
And you used?
So
Sabon.
basically,
Sabon is used
all
by
the
the
fonts-
sympathizer.
all the fonts were totally different.
Yeah. But
yeah.
There's so many fonts, like.
Some more than others, and I think most of the books used 2 different typefaces.
Yeah.
So more for the titles, or for the edits, or like the details, and then the other one for the body text, because the body text is very important to be readable,
Yeah.
because it's a book, it's a fiction book, so it should be as readable as possible. And yeah. I'm looking forward to see which typefaces will be used next year.
Do we have one more question? No more questions? Yeah. Then we want to show the setup because we are at Walters. Walters generously gave us a space to actually set up and to use some of her materials. So let's do a little behind the screen, behind the scenes.
Yeah,
So
it's a bit shaky,
welcome to
I
Walter.
guess. I guess it's a bit
Yeah, we
shaky,
put some
but
of the books here.
yeah, it's a beautiful big space.
There is our
In the center,
technological tech ISA.
yeah, it's in the center of Arnhem.
What's this street called again? I forgot the name of the street. It's across from Shushi.
Lawyerstraat.
Oh yeah, it's at the Lawyerstraat. And
It's opened from, I think,
as a normal.
Thursdays to Saturdays.
Is it open from Thursdays to Saturdays? It could be. And they have actually quite some interesting books, different than only fiction, but also some critical books on society, politics. So yeah, that's actually nice. It's different than most of the bookstores you usually find, I guess.
Yeah.
Do we close up? Do we do a little dance?
I think, yeah, we can close up.
Yeah?
Dance?
No.
No,
No.
don't dance.
Okay, no dance.
It's too warm.
It's too warm. Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for
tuning in.
Thanks
See
for
you
tuning
next
in.
year. Subscribe to Isa's channel. You can find it at Hot Girl 666.